Yeah, here we go, we're live now. Okay, so today I'm live with a fellow leftist for once. I'm here with Lapis, also known
Yeah.
as at Degenerate the on Twitter. Um,
Yeah, there's a story behind that. I originally wanted to be the effeminate degenerate on Twitter, but it wouldn't actually go. I had to like change around some words. And so it was degenerate the effeminate.
yeah. Uh, anyway, so I'll let my guest introduce themselves.
Yeah. So I'm an intersectional feminist, socialist, leftist. Um, I'm a bit monistic in my religious beliefs. So I believe that there is all the kind of gods of the universe are actually this one being. And I started my Twitter account because I thought that I need to get my voice out there, and that because I saw a lot of concerning trends in the world. I actually used to be kind of like right wing, but then like I started looking at the facts, and I'm like, oh, they say facts over feels, but what they really mean is ignore the facts and shout angrily and emotionally into the camera and convince the audience that what they're saying is actually true, and it's not.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good place to start, actually. Lots
Mhm.
of certainly in the circles I'm in, lots
Yeah.
of left-wing people, or certainly people on the far left, have like come directly from being in quite right-wing, anti-quote unquote SJW
Yeah.
groups themselves, like people who got suckered in by pretty empty but emotionally appealing rhetoric about how people are trying to attack you for being white and being a man and all
Yeah,
that
it's
stuff.
it's very like it's very strong, this propaganda. They're like there's you look at the titles of some of these videos and it's stuff like they're indoctrinating your children. Like Sargon of Akkad. It's literally a video called Indoctrinating Your Children with like the Agent Orange eye open. It's insane the amount of indoctrination. Actually, what finally got me to stop is when I realized that Sargon actually wasn't this kind of paragon that they present themselves, because they're very good at creating these images. They don't actually create a real person. That's why that you seldom see them looking at the camera and being in front of you. Instead, they hide behind this constructed skeptical avatar with like these sunglasses and like some sort of animal with like a smirk on its face. And they do it to kind of craft this image of themselves as this all-knowing, skeptical sage, like, ooh, I'm controversial, I'm politically incorrect, you know, I'm not like those SJWs. And then they'll like relentlessly nitpick the left for like people, even the left mostly denounces like turfy kind of feminists.
Yeah. Or like liberal feminism where it's like
Oh
some
my God, where
like
it's like,
JK
oh,
Rowling or
but
something.
like the video games, I hate them so much. I want them out. I don't like them. They make me, I'm just, it's a male power complex. And I'm fine with critiquing video games like any sort of media. Like, everything deserves a critique. It's just, some of the critique you get isn't very good. And so they kind of find the worst critique and they're like, see, the feminists are trying to ruin your video games. The feminists are after your everything. Hate the feminists. Ah. And you start to build this hysteria. And
Yeah.
it's a very effective method of control because you get people more afraid of, the crazy regressive left cultural Marxists than you do of the actual threat to their liberties, even in their own ideology, like the fundamentalist right.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like people like you said, they'll find like the one article that says like, oh, Hillary Clinton was the best politician ever because she's a woman. And they'll be like, yeah, you see the feminists, they don't have a clue. And go from there. When in
Mm-hmm.
reality, most feminists on the left are saying, no, well, we need to be tackling capitalism and looking at how,
Yeah.
women's
And
labor is sort of lost um
uh-huh.
in like, the unpaid
Yeah,
labor of mothers
Marxist
and stuff.
feminism. I'm really down for Marxist feminism. It's
Mm.
it's kind of a bit more obscure than it should be, but it is really important to critique kind of this imbalance of housework that women have to do and how their labor is kind of used and then not appreciated or rewarded in any way.
Absolutely, yeah. Like people, they hear Marxism and feminism really as both terms as just like these, yeah, exactly, like these evil like forces out to get them. And then if you take a minute and stop and think about it, it starts to make sense. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that women are just expected to do, like either around the house or with kids, which is exploited labor, unpaid, and people profit off it. You know, where's their recompense for that? Oh, it's a woman's place. Like, no, that's a deeply sexist view. And lots of people maybe don't outright have that at the forefront of their views, but they still think about it. They still think and expect that of their partners or wives or stuff.
Yeah. So, and then some women, you know, begin to expect it of themselves, and they try to place that on other women as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's so much of the left, you know, is really trying to say, yeah, we need to move past like the traditions of the past. We need to move beyond just expecting things to conform to this, you know, conservative, old-fashioned way of facing humanity. But then the second you do that, it's like, oh, you're trying to destroy the West. You're
destroying the family. You're destroying the family.
And like, even if you wanted to talk about destroying families and destroying people's lives, I mean, you could talk about, you know, capitalism or rise of the far right and all these things that are legitimately like harming people. But
what about the refugees family?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, they're the wrong color. They're different.
Yeah, not the white family. That's the one they don't say white family, but it's what they mean.
Absolutely. Like they it's like when they say, like, they, for instance, like there's criticism of Islam and stuff and Muslims.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can by all means criticize the structure of government in Saudi Arabia.
Oh God, it's terrible.
Like, absolutely, like go all lever against them, you know, because that's clearly not what people want. But you know what's happening in skeptic communities, quote unquote, skeptic communities, is just, you know, people looking at the fact that Muslims, for the most part, are of a darker skin tone than you know, the average Westerner, and going against that. You ask the average person to differentiate between a Muslim and a Sikh or a Hindu in those communities, would they be able to tell?
No.
They don't know the difference between a burqa and a turban.
No,
they don't see what they're talking about.
It's funny. I was actually at an Antifa rally, and I was wearing a scarf, not like this. But like an actual, just kind of a scarf covering, and this fascist came up to me. He's like, "Take off your burqa," but it's not a burqa. It's not a burqa. It was literally like not even a bandana. It was just a face covering.
Yeah,
they're just so scared, and
they don't have a clue.
Well, yeah, and because, you know, if they actually knew these people, if they actually had conversations with people of faith, then they wouldn't hate them because they would know them. But because, you know, their only experiences with Muslims are like Sargon of Akkad's videos, like, ooh, see how many crimes the immigrants are doing, but actually not. Oh, wait, that's just all immigrants. I'm going to try to blame all the Muslim refugees, though. They push that propaganda so relentlessly. And the talking point, Islam is the religion of peace. You know, they're like, ugh, I hate that. But that wasn't even a leftist thing. I think that was George W. Bush who originally came up with that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wonder, because Bush, you know, was making a big effort to try and sound better than his policies were. So like saying, oh, you know, we don't hate Muslims, we hate the Taliban and stuff, and we hate Al Qaeda.
Radical Islamic terrorism.
But it says something when George Bush is a better like descriptor of Islam than, you know, you are. Like,
no, honestly,
you have to laugh, really. Like, and like you said, you can tell these people like have, you know, either barely ever spoken to people of faith or Muslims and stuff, or are just lying about their experiences. Because you know, anyone who spent like 2 seconds in a city centre, you know, you'll see Muslims walking around, and you know, they're just the same. They're normal people in the country, just, you know, going about their lives.
Yeah.
And it just happens that some of them are wearing different clothing or are praying in a different way. It's like, if anything, like they're, you know, friendlier than many people, because, you know, of the fact they're, you know, either moving to another country or they stand out more because of their differences. So they're, you know, trying to be more open and stuff. And it's people. And it's people from outside these communities of mixed faiths and mixed appearances and stuff saying, oh, you know, look at the cities, they're just slums. It's like, yeah, the scaremongering. It's like people who go on about how like London has become this dump in my country, for instance. when
Or was it like Birmingham is like a no-go zone for non-Muslims? Like you
yeah,
can't go there, like
just
not
while
allowed.
lying about Birmingham. And
Yeah.
you could say that, and it's like, oh yeah, there's more crime. There's well, yeah, there's more poverty in cities, and there's more people in cities. So of course, there's going to be
So
more crime.
duh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like basic, facts about the way
Mhm.
people are under the system.
Yeah.
Do them like
And,
Muslims specifically.
and I think you made an interesting point there that I kind of want to go back to is that not only do these people not, may not met a Muslim, it's because they live in completely geographically different areas of the country. Like normally either by class or by geography, they're isolated from communities of color, from poor people, from Muslims. And so they fear them. And so they
Yeah,
make these videos against them, expressing their fear. And they've, I once heard the skeptic community described as hate radio for millennials. And I think that's really accurate. Like Sargon of Akkad is the Rush Limbaugh of our generation.
it's quite true though. Yeah, I completely agree. Like I mean, before we had Fox News just directly streaming their propaganda to this entire generation, and now we have right-wing reactionaries on social media doing the same thing, essentially
Yeah.
telling their audience to think and act a certain way, telling them no,
Yeah.
everyone else is out to get you, feeding them a
The
narrative
thought
which
leaders.
is easy to believe because it requires no change for yourself and just projecting all the blames onto a certain group.
Yeah.
Um, and to be like quite frank, it requires a if they talk about indoctrination, but
Yeah.
it,
They're the
it does.
indoctrinators.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's easy for us to say that. Like everyone's always going to say, "Oh yeah, they're the ones who've been indoctrinated." But you look at the abysmal standard of reading articles, like looking at the title of something that's obviously been written to garner attention, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is."
Blair White, where she's like, that article is like, not even trying to not be racist is racist for the leftists now. And it was like actually an article about, saying, look, actually, these efforts like trying to get rid of yoga in classrooms, maybe this is not the most productive use of time. Maybe we can like work to more concrete ways of liberation instead of like these random crusades against clothing. And it was an article that, actually one of the skeptics on the nicer side, I'm being very generous right now, might have written. But instead, she used it as an example of the evil BuzzFeed left, having impossible standards of white people. In reality, the impossible standard is just treating people of color like human beings. And that
Yeah.
comes to some people, unfortunately.
I mean, I think also like with stuff like Black Lives Matter is another major target of.
Oh God!
Like
it's a black supremacist. They're black supremacists. See the fist? It was used by black power. No radical movement has ever borrowed symbols from another radical movement. Like, are the French supposed to change their flag because that republic once chopped off rich people's heads? Is that what will satisfy the centrist obsession with like cutting out any bit of radical history?
Well,
is
then
that what they want?
The thing with them is that they ignore the power streams and sort of focus of where whom has the ground in society and like the marginalized to the powerful. So they're fine with normalized violence, like police enforcement or people just talking about their far right views. But when it comes to groups that actively want change, that actively refuse to let quote unquote politeness and social norms reign over their anger, becomes a problem. So when you see Black Lives Matter saying that they want the end of police, they see that as the act of violence and not the decades of police brutality on black areas. When they see LGBTQ people, saying, you need to say our pronouns correctly. You need to recognize that our identities are completely valid. They see that as trying to erase straight people, when in reality, it's just
mystical
them.
heterophobia and cisphobia. Did you see that poem I posted on my Twitter feed about that girl who was like, "You use cisgender, that is your aggression."
Gosh. Yeah, no.
Like, can you imagine what a sheltered, fragile world you have to live in to imagine that using the term cisgender is an attack, is violence?
Well, exactly. I mean, it says a lot of the tactics and obvious duplicity of these people when they take a basic adjective, cis, cisgender, which literally only means the gender you were assigned with. Like I'm cis. Like,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I have
yeah,
nothing
exactly.
wrong with that.
All it is just a way of showing, oh, these are cis people, these are trans people. It's just it's an adjective. And then these people, you know, unwilling to recognize that, yeah, there's actual like theory and logic behind, you know, being trans, and it's not some aberration or anything. They turn it into a weapon. It's like when people say, you know, trans women are women, and then people respond to that with, oh, you know, you're trying to erase women, you're trying to force lesbians to be in relationships with trans people. It's like all rhetoric.
Oh God, that's so stupid. Like pretty much every prominent like leftist on YouTube, on Twitter has been like, I don't believe that. You're taking me out of context. You know, sleep with whoever you want. But still, like the Blair White types are like, oh my God, you know, these trans unreasonable trannies, they're like pushing this narrative. And like, I'm reasonable, I'm respectable, I'm Christian, and I don't agree with that. And actually, like, this is like, there's so much hate from the left nowadays. And I just don't understand why they don't like me. And, you know, they just.
She's awful. Like,
I know.
She's so like unpleasant as a person.
Yeah.
Just imagine, just every single video is with the same arrogant, like, oh, you know, the left are being rubbish. I'm the real sensible trans person, just pandering to the conservatives' views. People who only put up with her because she's, you know, a token minority who can say the stuff.
And they don't even like Ben Shapiro. It's almost sad in a way, the way she's kind of being used by them.
There was an article a few months ago, like where, you know, she's misgendered by people who are supposedly on the same, coming from the same place as her. She did a live stream, and the chat is just awful. It's like filled with like literal Nazis posting swastikas and, you know, saying that trans people need to be exterminated and stuff. And it's like, how can she not see? She must recognize that there's something seriously wrong with the community she's surrounded herself with. But, you know, because if she decides to change, then she's going to lose a lot of her, you know, income, because she makes a lot of money from, you know, pandering to these people. So
and maybe she saw once like these crazies on Twitter, and you know, there are some crazy people on Twitter. Like there's crazy people on any social media platform. And she was like, she just decided, okay, I'll make a little video to this, you know, in my house and express my opinions on it. And then over time, you know, as this started to pick up more and more money, she just got trapped in this whirlwind of the skeptic community. And then she's gotten stuck. I know this is the most charitable reading of Blair White. The uncharitable reading is that she's an Aunt Tom, you know, kind of, you know, just making money off of trashing people like her and trying to create a hierarchy of trans people. You have the transsexuals, in her view, which are trans women that are passing, that have transitioned. Then you have the ones that are transitioning but haven't transitioned, you know, that aren't passing. Then you have aren't transitioning, aren't passing, and then you have the evil non-binary, like gender communists. And it's kind of like this totem pole with Blair White on the top.
I mean, it's so disgusting. Like firstly, like forcing trans people to meet, you know, the standard, the gender stereotype we've created for ourselves.
Yeah.
But secondly, also ignoring the fact that, you know, capitalism is gonna, you know, negatively benefit poor trans people compared to, you know, it's easier to transition if you're wealthier and have privileges like Blair. Imagine if you're, you know, black and living in a neighborhood where, you know, there's heavy police brutality and you can't really do much to express yourself. Imagine if you live in an area where there's no clinic around for ages, so you can't even afford to get to the clinic, let alone pay for the treatment.
Or like if you live in South Carolina, where there's discriminatory laws against trans people. I think there's like 19, 20 states in the United States where it's actually legal to just fire someone for being trans.
Yeah, well, they're removing it's not even like there's just them. They're actively trying to remove more of these rights, not just for trans people, but for LGBTQ people in general.
It's true.
Like, it's terrifying. Like, but then these same people who, you know, seem to think that LGBTQ people have it good in society and are trying to erase straight people.
Oh, yeah, I know. Like what world are you living in? I want that world. Give me that world.
Exactly. Like, imagine if these people actually lived in, imagine if people who supposedly were having it good actually lived in this condition. Like no one would be unhappy in a situation where they've got the power, they've got the dominance over everyone else. Like
no, we would be acting like they're acting right now. We would be making a bunch of scaremongering videos about the straights. Oh, we need to guard the gay family against the straights. And did you hear there's some people that don't want to transition? Oh, this is intolerable. This is cultural fascism.
it's ridiculous. And then also, like, if they like to present, us quote unquote SJWs as so unreasonable and so demanding, but if they could take like 2 seconds to do some basic research about any of this, like just a Google search
or anything.
Exactly. If they just spoke to us in like a polite manner, made an actual attempt to sort of change their ways, they'd be accepted with a heartbeat. Anyone can see that the people who are trans or of any marginalized group, they don't want to be treated as some pet project or anything, or like some I am holier than thou. Like they just want to be normalized and accepted in society for who, not even accepted, embraced in society for who they are, not having to be seen as a separate identity.
A pariah.
Exactly. It's like the people who are always going on at trans people are the reason trans people need the societal combat for transphobia.
Yeah.
It's like there's a reason trans people have to be vocal and firmly oppose discriminative language or harmful jokes, because they contribute to a culture that actively erases and literally kills them.
And it's true, because do you remember that like the whole trap thing? I think is like a really good kind of starting point for that, because people, like a lot of people even on the left, like, oh, I'll just use this as an edgy joke, or like I'll self-identify as a trap to kind of like erase the pain that they feel from constantly being used as an insult against them. Even my name on Twitter, the effeminate degenerate, was actually in response to a fascist insulting me. And so I took back the insult, and I see why. I see that instinct, but there's also like with trap in particular, like that is like such a dangerous thing for trans people who are they're constantly at risk. Like people like me are constantly at risk of going into bed with a man who you didn't mislead, but who maybe they thought you misled, and then they'll try to like kill you for just being you, because they expected something different. And you try, no matter how hard you try to kind of not lead them on, you're always going to get some people who just stumble into these situations. And I think it actually, in some places in America and just in some regions around the world, it's actually an acceptable defense to say, oh, I was startled that they were trans, and that's why I killed them. It wasn't my fault. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting when you consider that people actually think it's justifiable to murder someone for being trans, essentially. But it just it leaves you speechless in many ways, or certainly leaves me speechless, thinking about just the sheer scale of transphobia in society. And it makes it clear that the position of people on the left to trying to tackle and remove the elements of transphobia, like with terms such as trap, which clearly hold some pretty problematic and unpleasant ideas about trans people. It makes
they're just kind of these things that are trying to ensnare men.
Yeah, and like
I'll even read. I don't know if I can. Am I still on?
Still on?
Yeah, still on the Hangout. Can you still see?
Yeah. I can
off of Urban Dictionary. I will read the definition of trap.
Yeah. Just to sorry to interject. You can screen share, by the way, and put this up onto the screen.
Oh, how can I do that?
So at the left side of your screen, there's a little green monitor, or a monitor with a green image on it with an arrow. Second one down on the left.
Okay.
And if you click that, and I can
share.
Yep.
Okay. So just a second. So do you see what I'm seeing? The definition of trap on Urban Dictionary. This is kind of a trigger warning for transphobia here. A man who dresses like a woman and is somewhat feminine in appearance could almost be mistaken for a woman until you are in a bedroom with one. watch out for these types. They're usually afraid to get intimate because you might discover their little secret, but sooner or later, you will find out the truth.
It's like, how can someone not see the problems in a rhetoric like that?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and that's the term. That's what it means. That's the definition. That's the fourth, most liked definition on this huge website for, kind of slang these days that is being used. That's what it means. It's not some funny, harmless little joke. It's expressing this deep-seated paranoia of the deceptive trans person. It's expressing the deep-seated paranoias of cis society that, the subversive trans people, they're corrupting society, and, they're even corrupting the body. You kind of see this thing even among, even in the radical left, we have some elements that have this view, kind of the turfy things that you read these books from like the 1970s, like the transsexual empire. And it's all these sort of thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think TERFs in general and those sorts of people, they come from quite a brand of feminism that has predominantly served wealthy conservative feminists. So, for instance, you look at the certain members of the original suffragettes, and they were staunch conservatives. They fought for the right to vote, but only for women they deemed qualified enough to vote, wealthy white women. Because if you look at when women got the right to vote, and then all women got the right to vote, it's different times in my country. Anyway.
Significantly late. No, it's true in Canada. I think Native women only got the vote in like 1951, and straight women got it in 1919. I mean, not straight. I mean, white women. Sorry.
Yeah. But it's just you got to look at the intersectionality of all these issues, and all too often, TERFs don't.
No.
I mean, I don't even like using the word TERF because I find it too generous, really. Like, I don't really see, like, you can't be a feminist if you're just excluding women you don't like recognize from your movement.
Like, they also like have a thing against sex workers, Muslim women. They don't like women who are involved in porn, and it's starting to be like the list goes on and on. How many women are you going to count out and ignore and still claim to represent a sisterhood?
And it's like, also like they if they propagate many of the sexist ideas that feminism is sort of like standing against, like, for instance, the idea that a woman's body like can't be used in a free way that person wants to use it for. Like, the idea that a sex worker is being raped every time she, wants
or
to.
Even all women, all sex is rape.
It's like, that's such a rubbish view to have.
Can you imagine how miserable their life is? Just like every time they're about to have sex, they're like, oh, I don't want to be raped. So they run back to their room and they just go back online and go to Our Gender Critical and start writing up another screed against trans people. Like, what a miserable ideology.
No, it's not pleasant, is it? It's like, just, I mean, I think that's a sort of a crossover there with far-right ideologies. Like, the sort of exclusion you have to give yourself to, cast out so many people from society, be it LGBTQ people or non-white people or feminists or the people on the left. It's like, what kind of life is that?
And or the degenerates, the cucks, and we start to get into like how many, like, what is like 10,000 people are you going to be left with who share exactly your beliefs?
Yeah. I mean, they also they portray this they portray like a double sort of standard. They'll say we're winning the culture, or we're the predominant force, but then also say we are
the left is so mean and destroying everything, and they're winning, and we can't stop them.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Like, there's so many holes in the standard rhetoric seen on in these right-wing circles. And I think what's also so dangerous is that so many of them have been so easily co-opted by the far right. Like, you look at what these quote unquote skeptic channels were saying like years ago, and look at what they're saying now, and it's really alarming.
It's moved significantly to the right.
Yeah, like
especially in terms of racial areas.
yeah, no, race realism. Like a few years ago, you mentioned some of that stuff, and it's like you're instantly going to get shut down. It's like, oh yeah, you're making us look bad. You're obviously a Nazi. These days, it's like, yeah, let's hear your ideas. Let's hear your
It's just one idea in the free marketplace. What's the harm? You know?
marketplace of ideas, flipping it. Like,
You know.
bit like these people who they define themselves as, oh well, yeah, I'm a skeptic, and they can't see how like letting some Nazi like tell you about how black people are actually subhuman like isn't harmful, and like the fact that they can't realize that broadcasting it live on a massive platform and it gets to #1 on trending videos,
And they boast about it.
yeah, it's like they don't have any understanding of what ideas can do. Like it's in like livable history. People were alive, then, who are alive now during the rise of Hitler, when Hitler used the platform he was given. The fact that liberals and centrists wouldn't take him seriously,
and ultimately gave him government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they put him in power to say, oh yeah, we'll control him more now, because he won't be able to do anything once he's in government.
I mean, at least he's better than the commies.
Yeah, yeah. The communists, they were happy to write off as the left terrorists, which then removed any physical opposition to the SA and then later the SS. You've got to people talk about sorry to bring us to another topic. People talk about the rise of the Nazis as though it's just some disconnected like aberration, like
it's never happened before and it will never happen again.
Yeah, exactly. Like when in reality it's just a case study of capitalism and a case study of what happens when you have a far right which isn't dealt with in a firm way. A society of a market base of ideas. You have tactical propagandists like Hitler who can very easily manipulate the system, who can say on one hand to disgruntled workers, oh, let's focus our problems on Jews, people of color, LGBTQ people, etc.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Hitler's main base wasn't actually the working class. That went mostly to the communists.
Yeah,
the working class and the unemployed were communists. What got Hitler elected was the out of work kind of what used to be called the petty bourgeoisie, which I think is kind of an outdated term that we kind of need to move past, but that's besides the point. They were shopkeepers. They were peasants as well, people who were toiling in the fields, who felt so disconnected from this crazy new society of the 1920s and these radical new ideologies that were spreading in the cities. And they wanted something to keep them safe and protect them from all these threats that, that they saw in their life. And then, along comes Hitler and he says, look here, I have the answer to your problems. It's the Jews.
Yeah.
Right. And he makes them feel safe with this strong state. And, if you've ever read kind of like Horkheimer, he describes this, how the state kind of took a paternal role for these people, kind of replacing the defunct and dying family with father state, with Hitler acting as the father of the nation.
Yeah. And like you said, like the Hitler's working class people, they tend to lean left. And yeah, Hitler did manage to sweep up a few workers, but dominantly his support base also was corporations too, and the wealthy.
Oh yeah.
Because Hitler, was a capitalist. The party may have been cool, but
take note, Ian Miles Cheong.
Oh gosh. Yeah, they may call themselves the National Socialists, but the party was not only funded and backed by the wealthy, supported by people who recognized that the capitalists were trying to, not the capitalists, the Nazis were, the last vanguard of capitalism, protecting public property and deregulating the economy.
Let's do away with this kind of liberal illusion, it's nice and it makes us feel good about ourselves, but honestly, people are getting too uppity, so let's just shut it down. Let's shut it down and give some order to this place so we can finally make some money.
Yeah, exactly. Like fascists are capitalists in capitalism's decay. They want capitalism to survive so they can maintain the order of society whilst, commodifying and dehumanizing people who live in it, crushing the workers, using minorities and religious people and stuff, not religious people, specific religions you don't like, to fund your society, because a lot of it, you've got to also look at the fact that Nazis based a lot of their not deportation, concentration camp systems on American systems
and Canadian ones. That is like a great shame of the country I live in, is that our reservations served as an inspiration for kind of apartheid and Hitler and all these things. It's kind of.
I mean, I think most European nations are going to come across pretty dark times in their history. I mean, my own country colonized half the world. Like our crimes in India or in South Africa or in the Caribbean is well noted. And I think that's another thing. You see lots of people, say about how Western culture, it's the predominant one. We've got all the power and the wealth and the great, how we modernize the world, and they ignore or choose to lie about the history that it's built upon, the slavery that was imposed, the creation of the white race, to dehumanize non-white people and justify slavery and the commodification and thus profiting off their labor through slavery. The entire history of the West is one of essentially colonialism and imperialism. Yet these Western capitalists choose to ignore all this, or choose to lie about all this, and
present like the narrative of modernization. Oh, we came in there and we built railroads, and everyone made a lot of money.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's absurd.
And they ignore that those railroads, that the foundations of the colonial societies they created, were based on the blood of those who they replaced and those who they enslaved to get there.
Exactly. Not only that, but the railways that were built, which Indians had no chance of using, the industries which poor people who were predominantly of the nation they were colonizing, had no chance of ever benefiting from this infrastructure because they were kept out.
Or the black people that were forced into segregated train compartments.
Yeah, exactly.
Only able to look on into this kind of rich white world through the blurry train glass.
And I mean, you see this a lot with capitalism today, really. Like people saying, "Oh, look what capitalism's done! Look at all these lovely buildings and all this amazing technology." Which, first, it doesn't actually say anything good about capitalism. Because you're not actually saying anything. You're just saying, "Oh, it's here, and so is capitalism. So capitalism must be good." Like the lack of logic there. But the workers who built this, workers whose labor made it all possible.
Are they getting to use it? Are those Chinese factory workers buying the iPhones that they've made themselves? Or are they staying locked in factories with literal safety nets to prevent them from actually having any choice at all in their lives? Besides being just kind of hands.
Yeah, cogs. Human cogs. But then even then, if we had a different system, one of societal unison of communal power, of worker control of means of production, you could have seen phones well ahead of where they are now. Phones built to benefit people and to be great, not just to make profit for someone. Phones that don't break every year or so because they want to sell you another one.
Planned obsolescence.
Exactly. And then look at all other industries, like food, for instance. If food was communally distributed and owned, you would have no hunger because there's enough food on the planet to feed everyone. Yet instead, food is burnt off and destroyed because capitalists don't want to lose their profits or don't want to give away their capital for free. So, there's people starving needlessly. Land. There's so many empty homes in the West and so many homeless people, and the numbers are rising every year. I mean, certainly in the UK, it's growing every single year.
Well, you have the Maybot, don't you?
Yeah, we got Theresa May. But we've had Conservatives in power since 2010. I mean, technically it was a coalition government in 2010, but it was the Tories.
Didn't the Lib Dems kind of completely sell out and just do whatever you want? We don't care. We're in power.
I mean, some would argue the Lib Dems were always a little bit, conservative anyway. And certainly Labour before them, like New Labour. Yeah, exactly.
Just completely third way, neoliberal.
Yeah. Tony Blair, I mean, thankfully his reputation is now ruined for most people, right?
Yeah. Everyone, I noticed in England, the one thing everyone seemed to be able to agree about was that they hated Tony Blair.
Just the the stereotype of a modern politician, just a career sellout who'll do anything to raise his own fortunes, who'll do anything, you know, and say another thing if it benefits his own PR team. You know, just like it says everything about the country. But yeah, no, our country like is in turmoil at the moment, really, in terms of the fact that our public services are being massively defunded by capitalists with the intention of privatizing them.
Like the NHS.
Yeah, exactly. The NHS, which, you know, these you know, you see a lot of people in America saying, oh well, you know, this is a sign that socialism doesn't work. Like,
it's so hilarious. Like, as soon as you introduce a bit of capitalism, like, this is why socialism doesn't work. But I mean, did you look at the history of the system where it was completely socialist, where it was, well, socialist government run, where it was a communal program? It was brilliant. It was the best healthcare system in the world. And now that they've decided to like keep pushing privatization everywhere, now it's starting to collapse. And they blame socialism. You know, the solution when things getting worse, do more of what's making it worse.
Yeah, it's like but then, you know, firstly, it's not, you know, socialist for the start. It's just government run. Like, it's not worker
that's
control.
what I said.
Yeah. No, you were right. Yeah, I was just
re-cementing it, because there is the kind of Cenk Uyghur sort of contingent where it's like, if the government owns something, it's socialist.
Yeah, and they'll look at Europe and say, oh, they should be more like Europe. We should be socialist. And it's like, you know, you start.
I wish, but
yeah, no, exactly. Like, it's like we're not living in socialism chain just because we're not America. But yeah, firstly, it's not socialist. Secondly, like, if it was socialist, there wouldn't be any of the problems we're having, you know, now. If it only started getting bad, like you said, when it was when more right-wing policies were brought in. But thirdly, even with the NHS in the status in today, it's still light years ahead of what is going on in America.
America's healthcare system.
Yeah, forget long waiting times. You don't have to wait because you're not going to afford it. You're just going to like have to live with your illness and die, basically.
I know, it's so terrible. And there are some like really right-wing people in Canada where I live who are trying to like push for like an American style healthcare model. But like most of the population just laughs them off. And normally, once they experience the US system themselves, they're like, oh, yeah, Canada's is way better. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Like, I've known people like who they go to America. One of them is like either like a skateboarder or like a BMXer or something. Broke their arm, and they just kept their arm in like a homemade sling because they didn't want to have to pay like the ambulance fee and the hospital like bed fee to, you know, get treatment in the hospital. Like, it's that bad. People actively avoid, you know, basic medical care because it will deprive them of their income, of their, you know, subsistence in life.
You know, elderly people, you know, they don't want to bankrupt their family because they know the cost of healthcare would actually drive people out of their home. So they just stay in their bed and they die to avoid being a burden to their family and costing them their life. Like, it's actually true that the number one cause of, you know, losing your house in America is medical bills. Can you imagine just paying for the basic necessity of being able to live healthily with your home? What is going on with a system that produces that?
Exactly. You know, and then it's not even just with healthcare; it's with food as well. Like, you got to consider, you know, the abysmal standard of American food quality, like the stuff they put into their meat, the stuff they, you know, put into their foods before it reaches the shelf.
It's disgusting. I've been to the United States. I've eaten the food. Not an experience I want to repeat.
Exactly, but you know, they price out the higher quality food, so it'd lead to healthier, you know, citizens and stuff. And then force workers to either choose between, you know, buying cheaper stuff or losing other luxuries, or not even luxuries, losing like the ability to pay rent. Yeah, exactly. For, you know, nicer, more better quality food. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's capitalism in a nutshell. You know, making profit by cutting corners, making a commodity out of decent standards, and
out of everything.
Exactly, commodifying life itself. And these right-wing people in America don't seem to realize that, you know, the clear lack of equality in many aspects of American life is because of capitalism, because of the system.
Well, what actually I think convinces these the kind of the poor Southerner, that that it's worth it, that America's the best, is two things. The first is the heavy indoctrination and nationalism that's just pushed and pushed and pushed in America. You go to America and you see flags everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They're on the trucks, they're on the companies, they're on the homes, they're everywhere. You can't escape them. You just, you drive a mile and you're pretty much bound to see an American flag somewhere. It's insane. And in the schools, like the way they like kind of airbrush their history and say, African people were just brought over. That was a test question, a description of slavery, is that African people were brought over, or Native people were convinced to leave.
It's so
It's
bad.
starting to get to Pocahontas levels, where that actually might be a version of history that Americans believe.
Yeah. It's embarrassing how little so many Americans know about their country. And like you said, like like for instance, Americans will laugh at other countries for supposedly backwards traditions, and they'll mock North Korea for being dedicated to President Kim. And yeah, fine, North Korea is not a great country, but let's look at America, where you say the Pledge of Allegiance before every lesson or every morning in school.
God we trust.
Yeah, exactly. You have to swear an oath on a Bible, or another like element of religion. You gotta do all these things to fit the American way, and if you dare criticize the flag, or if you don't sing the national anthem,
if you burn the flag, God bless your soul, they will be after you. Conservatives talk about the evil leftists, they're punching Nazis. They post tons of videos punching flag burners, and are so enthusiastic. Yeah, punch that guy for expressing his opinion. Like that's an actual opinion. That's not like fascism, which is a threat. That's an opinion.
Yeah.
And you still want violence against them, and you celebrate that violence. But when it's a Nazi, why can't you just tolerate the other opinions? It's just an opinion. Why are you such an intolerant, violent person? When someone wants to kill me, I invite them over for tea.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like these, I mean, the Conservatives, they're never in the targets of crosshairs of the far right. They're never going to be wanted, removed, because they're the people the Nazis consider part of society. White, straight people of European or American descent and stuff.
Conservatives are the Nazis' target audience.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why so many center and right-leaning people end up being so easily coerced by the far right. But going back to what you're saying about flag burners, I mean, objectively, if you look at America as a nation, what other response is there but to be condemning of the place? A nation that has done everything in its power to maintain its dominance over the planet, rampaging across Latin America and Africa and Southeast Asia to enforce the American way, American capitalism onto anyone. I mean, look at what happened to Guatemala and El Salvador and Chile and all these other Latin American countries when they started, democratically electing, left-leaning leaders, not even socialists, just, left-leaning people. And then America backs a fascist coup, or and
then the fascists unleash violence all across the country, and then they blame the leftist guerrillas for inciting violence. I'm sorry, if you overthrow my country's government and you install a dictator and you are invading with troops over the country and privatizing my land, I think that's a cause to resist.
Yeah, it's absurd just what is said by conservatives to push their way. Like, you see all these these stock images of Venezuela been made
oh god, the stuff. Tragedy of Venezuela is another Sargon title that recently came out. Which it's actually amazing though that they're ignoring the American role, the American blockade that is significantly harming the Venezuelan economy and stopping imports of health care items and food and all these things that are a necessity for life. If you actually want to help the Venezuelan people, give them aid. Don't give them blockades.
Yeah. And that's what happens to a nation that dares stray from American capitalism. But we got to look at Venezuela as well. It's not even a socialist country. It's got a massive private. It had a massive private sector.
Something like 70%.
Yeah, it's got a state. It's got private property. It's got a deeply corrupt Chavez administration, or had one, I guess.
Yeah, the Chavez administration is interesting because he did push a lot of reforms that were genuinely socialist, like collectives, like that sort of thing. Like he actually gave a lot of aid to poor people in London, poor people in New York. But there was also the element of corruption within the administration inherited from previous regimes. Venezuela is a very corrupt country, and the Chavez government unfortunately didn't do enough to combat that corruption. So when the oil prices inevitably fell, they had not invested enough also in the infrastructure of the oil industry and, the economy surrounding it to provide a stable economy. So instead, all that was left was, this kind of collapsing oil economy. And so they started to borrow, and then that borrowing led to hyperinflation. But, there was some incompetence there, and there is still corruption, and they're starting to kind of slide away from the democracy that they had. But that doesn't mean invade them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like they'll no doubt, like with Chile, where Chile, its economy is booming, but at the expense of democracy, and there's massive wealth inequality there now. And it's like they'll do the same thing with Venezuela. Probably they'll install a fascist or a right-lean, a massive capitalist who will privatize everything. Yeah, and just make it a puppet state for America, basically, to make profits out of. And then they'll talk up how America helped and stabilized the region and stuff, when in reality it's a situation they caused, and they probably made worse. Like there's people starving in Venezuela now because of America's blockade of aid, and because of not socialist policies, but of the system
just kind of hyperinflation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just another failure of kind of like maybe a more statist model, but still a failure of capitalism. It wasn't the worker collectives and cooperatives that failed. It was it was the kind of the state corrupt economy. And you see similar crises in neoliberal countries, like in Argentina in the early 2000s, entered a similar crisis that Venezuela is going now in, a spiral of hyperinflation. And the only thing that solved it was a more genuinely leftist government that enacted, policies, solid fiscal policies, and actually stood up to the lenders instead of just kind of caving into their demands.
Yeah. And like you think about the problems we see in the decay of capitalism, and how easily they could be averted if we just moved away from the system entirely. Like, people losing their jobs. It's like, well, if we had a society where we didn't have to sell our labor to earn a living, then that wouldn't be the case. If we utilized the technology we clearly have in abundance to eradicate the need for people to have to work endless
hard labor.
That would help as well. Like if all food was societally owned, no one would need to go hungry, no one would need to starve. Yet here we are with millions in the West missing meals to be able to afford their rent or their healthcare or whatever.
They have to pick and choose between the necessities of life.
Exactly, and it's actually discussed every single person on the planet. Yeah, because of the indoctrination and lies about capitalism, people just ignore it.
Yeah, because, well, it's all they know, right? To a serf, feudalism would have seemed a very normal and ordinary condition. To a slave, unfortunately, although there were many noble examples, their condition would have seemed sadly normal, to be owned by another human being. Likewise, under capitalism, to have to sell your labor and get only a pittance in return, and to make these terrible decisions, is also seen as natural, is also seen as justified.
I mean, and they don't hold the same standards to the wealthy in society. Like people born into millions, they just have the luxuries to do as they wish, don't have to work hard at all because of the amount provided for them. And in many cases, cause the actual problems that leads to the recession in the first place, like wasting billions on terrible products.
Yeah, and like the sorry, is there a knock at your door?
No, I think I just dropped something.
Oh, okay. I worried.
I think I did.
Like, there's not like the capitalist police aren't coming to knock at your door and like, ooh, we've heard what you're up to, Owen. It won't be stood for.
Yeah.
So where were we? Oh yeah, the double standard on the wealthy. Yeah, what we really do have is kind of a welfare state. Neoliberalism is essentially shifting the welfare state from the people to the wealthy and the mega corporations. It's amazing how much government money is given to support this failing system. Like it's hundreds of billions. Did you want me to look up the number that's in the UK of how much is given to corporate welfare?
Go ahead. I mean, it's I
Okay.
don't know the exact figure, but it's going to be colossal.
Yeah.
But also just the you know, the idea that lots of people say, oh, capitalism, it's maybe not full capitalism, but we're happy to have welfare for poor people and stuff. And then because capitalism can't sustain itself, you can't have infinite growth.
Almost $100 billion a year. All the problems with the NHS could be fixed if that weren't the case.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And like I was saying, people like to say about capitalism, oh, well, we still support people who don't have jobs. We still have welfare programs.
Yeah.
We still have stuff,
Well, I mean, it depends what country you're in. Some of them actually don't.
Exactly. And, secondly, like when things get tough for the wealthy, these programs inevitably get defunded and, looted of their resources for, the protection of the wealthy's capital. I mean, look at benefits in the UK, slashed massively, which to the point where people can't afford to heat their homes under, the thing because they don't have
didn't they want to even cut in the last election, didn't the Tories even want to cut that tiny subsidy that was being given to people who couldn't afford to heat their homes?
Yeah.
Was even that like too much for these vulture capitalists?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry. But also, like, how many was given to the banks when they collapsed due to the reckless deregulation of private speculation?
Exactly. Like the billions shelled out for them because of a crisis of their own doing. That in itself, this shows you that capitalism is not a meritocracy because, people who had such wealth and such power over the economy and then completely ruined it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I do think it's an inevitability of capitalism. You can't grow forever, so there's always going to be a crash. There's always going to be, the
correction,
recession. Yeah,
and they're only going to get worse. These recessions. Oh, cool! It's like there's like one person commenting. There's like I'm just looking. I'm just looking at our feed right now, and it's just this one person saying socialism kills.
Same effing difference.
I know, like socialism kills. Socialism kills.
Yeah, no, socialism kills, not capitalism, where like it's people starving and people dying because they can't heat their homes and people dying because they can't afford basic healthcare.
Socialism kills.
Do you want to say anything? But do you want to mute your YouTube feed? Because
I did. Sorry, it got a bit like hectic there. I just did. Sorry about that.
No worries. And then they say, when was the last time a conservative group riot and destroyed people's properties? Oh wait, that was the left-leaners. Like, just the amount of things. Firstly, the fact that property, like inanimate things, are more important than living people. It says everything of the mentality of the capitalist. But secondly, Nazis in Charlottesville drove a car into someone and killed them. Nazis, were getting.
I'm not laughing because I find this funny. I'm laughing because I find their inability to find, to see this threat funny.
Yeah. The Trump administration has already, removed lots of LGBTQ rights and legislation. Trump literally tried to ban trans people from serving the military, like within a year ago.
Yeah, and Blair White defended him and was like, I didn't want to serve in the military anyway, and most trans people are mentally ill. Like men have higher rates of depression and suicide. Should we ban men from the military? But that's their logic, right? Trans people have higher rates of depression and suicide, so they should be banned from the military.
Because they don't ignore the societal reasons for why trans people do suffer from these things more. They ignore the fact that conservatives and their enforced standards for gender and sex cause the misery trans people go through, literally get them killed.
Yeah.
And then they turn around and say, well, actually, that means the trans people aren't fit to serve. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's such an abhorrent view, but it's
It's
just
so stupid.
baffling that these people can just honestly say they have any intention but to erase trans people, because it's clear that's what they want to do. It's
Yeah.
clear that they, agree with a lot of the tenets of the far right in that trans people, represent a aberration to their societal order.
Yeah. They represent a threat to society, a threat to the family.
Mm.
Always that family. I always find it curious how conservatives, seem to think that these institutions that they support and these hierarchies they support are so strong, yet are so afraid of any like tiny challenge. You see a similar thing around immigration. The white race is superior. We are better than everyone else. But a little competition with black people, and we're collapsing. It's too hard for us to compete. They're too strong. Like, if you were really superior, you wouldn't be afraid, but you're not. And like, you had nothing to fear in the first place. It's just propaganda. It's just a false consciousness of shifting blame. And like, I think honestly that conservative media has done a lot to really damage society. Like, you look at things like The Sun or like the Daily Mail. Like, they're really well read. Like, a lot of people are reading those newspapers. But when you look at those newspapers, it's all trash. Like, it's most of it's lies, just utterly made up. Same thing with Fox News. Like, I think it was something I looked on PolitiFact, and it was something like over 50% of the claims they make are somewhat false to completely false.
Yeah, it's disgraceful. And then, because in like they'll be required to amend their lie, and it will be buried in like the page 50, like in some little subsection where it says the Sun reported last week that Muslims are building Muslim-only toilets in Birmingham, and this was a lie. But it's like so small and like in such small print that it's just no one's going to read it unless they're like
By design.
Yeah, exactly. And then whilst this is being printed, there's all on the headline, it's like halal meat, everyone forced to eat Muslim way, and it's just ridiculous.
Oh.
But going back to what you were saying about conservatives, like they and race and stuff.
Yeah.
If people if they weren't given this constant rhetoric about how white people were under attack and how immigrants were out to get them, workers and people of all races and genders and sexualities,
workers of all nations unite.
exactly, they'd come together and realize that no, this system is fundamentally flawed. We, the workers, are supporting this class of people that's taking from our labor and benefiting from it and pricing us out of a fair life with their control of the means of production. And then from there you've got the deconstruction of capitalism, the end of this forced hierarchy and order that the ruling class have placed over us. And conservatives can't have that because then that's their power gone. So instead they they come up with all these ideas and lies about how immigrants are coming to ruin American culture, how LGBTQ people represent the destruction of a family and stuff, and all these clear rubbish, which gets us accepted as fact, because ultimately it's all a distraction from the main problem, which is capitalism.
Yeah. And I'm like, I do believe like you can go a bit too far with that kind of logic where you get into like, oh, we shouldn't care about trans issues or LGBT issues at all and just focus on capitalism. And I think what is a better way is to focus on how capitalism is part of a larger social system that harms LGBT people as well, and to kind of deconstruct and defeat the racist narratives that are dividing the working class. And that they it's very successful what they're doing, because they provide the white working man an easy chance to escape his low place on the hierarchy, because now he can be part of another hierarchy where he's actually on the top, the racial hierarchy, and another hierarchy of sexual orientation, the straight hierarchy, where he's on the top. And so the kind of the way they kind of duck and dodge the real question, the question of class, is by creating all these different hierarchies and saying, look, we're on your side on all these issues, you should vote for us.
No, exactly. I mean, I absolutely agree that capitalism and this critique of it needs to be intersectional. Like, you need to be looking at all the angles of which this issue exists. And when I said a second ago, oh, but it's a distraction, I didn't mean as such. I didn't mean to say that like, oh, it's not relevant or anything.
No, I know what you meant. It's just, I like, and that honestly, I think that perspective is like, it kind of seems like a straw man that liberal feminists have created a bit. Like I've never actually encountered anyone who actually believed that outside of like one person on Reddit.
Believes what? Sorry.
The kind of that we should only focus on capitalism and that LGBTQ, all that other stuff isn't important. Just ignore it. It's a distraction. We'll have their revolution after the other one. To me, it's kind of a it's kind of a construction of liberal feminism that like socialism isn't completely infested with the Bernie bros.
Yeah. Like the idea that, oh well, they're all a bunch of like bigots anyway, so don't do it. I mean, the whole point of the far left is to liberate and free the workers of the world. So of course, that liberation has to also liberate people from a patriarchal views, liberate queer people from heteronormativity and anti-LGBTQ views. Go along with all these axes
and racial hierarchy,
ableism, all these elements of society which have societal hierarchies and marginalization. If socialism isn't doing all these things to liberate people, what good is it as a system?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it would, yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. Let's see here. Okay. Nothing. Sorry. Just a second. I was just looking to see if anyone else had commented on the chat, but it's still just the same guy that was like, socialism kills.
Thunder Bay personal trainer Logan Blake says, "Can I join the stream? Drop the link, please." Logan, if you message me on Twitter, I can look into that because then I can send you like a proper link and stuff.
He kind of looks like a red pilled guy. Is he gonna own us? He's gonna trigger the libs?
Oh, we never know. Assuming makes an ass out of all of us. So
we're just so stupid. We just can't handle anything. Any confrontation.
They could be a nice person. They might be.
Who knows? I invite them on, even if they are kind of a red pilled person. They should be good for a laugh.
Debunked. It's one of the videos on their channel.
Feminism debunked?
No, veganism debunked.
Oh, I'm not a vegan myself. I don't know very much about veganism.
They're live right now.
Yeah. Are they on? Did you send them the link?
No, they're watching our live stream.
Oh yeah, I know.
Live. And cool. No, on their own channel. Like they're on Logan's channel. He's watching our stream live.
And he's like, ooh, the libs. The libs.
I don't know, to be honest.
Oh, okay. But it would be pretty funny if he's like, the socialists. We have to like, yeah. Honestly, I'm excited to have him on. I want to hear what he has to say.
Well, I want to send him the link, but the other day, a link was put in an open stream, and it essentially ended up like flooded with people. So I don't want to.
Oh, so it started to turn into like a 4chan raid or something?
Not really a raid, but just overwhelming. Too many people to have a normal conversation.
And I think that this has been a pretty good conversation so far. I agree with so much of what you say, and just the way you say it. You're so eloquent.
You're too generous. But thank you. Yeah, and you have a lot of good stuff to say as well. Like, I mean, I talk about stuff that you talk about essentially, and we both word it differently, but it's all good the same. It's all still good. Any voice counts, basically.
Yeah. And I think we're both coming from like different perspectives as well. Like you're from England, you're a person of color. I'm from Canada. I'm I'm a pansexual trans woman. I don't know what your opinions are on religion.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm not religious.
That's okay. I support people who aren't religious. I believe in, freedom to make individual choices, and that includes the choice to not be religious.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Freedom of religion, but also freedom from religion, right?
I'm an atheist, and I believe secularism is, important. It's important to let people have their own choices and decisions about this stuff. I'm not one of the like edgy atheists. It's like,
God, the fedora tippers.
Yeah. Like the people who think they have some like holier than thou status because they like decided they were an atheist one day. And it's like, I feel as though we shouldn't be demonizing people for their own personal beliefs, especially when they don't harm anyone else. When it's you just saying, yeah, I believe this. You're not actively forcing anyone to do anything. So, if your atheism is literally just attacking religious people, then what's the point of that?
And also, it also includes a lot of like really kind of classist, racist rhetoric, kind of like mocking the third world. Like I had this French teacher, and she kind of did like this caricature of Africans, where she was like, oh, those Africans, they're like, oh, rain god, save me. Well, the rain god isn't going to save you. There's nothing up there. They need to stop doing these silly dances and these silly superstitions. They need to have science. They need to civilize.
Yeah.
And she kind of went on like this like kind of racist rant. And I tried to explain to the class, like I raised my hand. I was like, the reason like why Africa is, so religious in kind of in a fundamentalist stream is because the West, fundamentalists in the West are putting so much money into trying to convert these people. And, she kind of shut me down and was like, oh no. And kind of like moved on with the class before I could properly explain the situation. And I don't know, that really irritates me, like the whole, the barbaric religious third world. It's true that, I wouldn't want to live in Saudi Arabia. They would, they'd kill me in Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, like...
You got to analyze the conditions that creates the countries in the first place. Like, Western colonialism ravaging Africa and forcing their views onto the system. Like, Africa wasn't just inherently barbaric. In many areas, African, cultures and stuff, and cultures that originated from Africa, were ahead of the West.
Oh, yeah.
It's like if people have to think about the histories of their nations, they probably aren't going to like it at the end of it because it involves talking about slavery and acts of genocide and stuff.
And sorry, I thought you had like more to say.
Oh no, it's all right. Here we go. Right. The drunk vegan has sent me a DM on Twitter.
The drunk heathen?
Vegan.
Looks like
drunk vegan.
Oh, the drunk vegan.
That's their username on Twitter. So I'm going to send.
That's confusing because they're like veganism debunked, but also they're a drunk vegan.
So one of them's called Thunder Bay personal trainer Logan Blake.
Oh, Thunder Bay. Well, that's also in Canada. So.
And then the other one is called at Vohan the vegan. The drunk vegan.
Oh.
They'll join in a second, though, presumably.
What is both of them? We're inviting both of them on?
I've only got a message from one of them so far.
Okay, so it's kind of a you have to pay to play game here. Send me a DM or else you're not in.
Well, then I can just control who gets in and stuff.
Yeah, clever. Owen the Machiavellian. Anyway, what I was saying about the kind of the religion thing is that it does bother me when you get these kind of like militant atheist socialists, and they're like, ugh, the third world is so religious. I hate it. They're so barbaric. I hate it. And I'm like, these are the people you're supposed to be on the side of. These are the people who are fighting against, who are being oppressed. They need you. You can't just be constantly attacking them and, sniffing your nose at them. And it's classism. It's just another form of classism and racism.
You're regurgitating the social order that the capitalists you're saying you hate have. And there's a difference between being an atheist and mocking people for not being atheists.
Yeah, I support atheism. I support atheism, and I'm not an atheist, but I support the right of people to be atheists and to make their own choices religiously.
Secular atheists, they need to be fighting for secularism and to get religion out of the system of like organizing society and stuff, because then you end up with like Republican Party in America where they're just actively like teaching rubbish in schools because
where they want to replace science with religion. And exactly. I'm religious and personally very spiritual person, but I recognize that science also has a place too in I believe the design. And I don't think that kind of replacing dogma, like you can't enforce dogma when it's supposed to be science. Like you can't be teaching creationism in schools. I don't even believe in creationism. Like I kind of, my interpretation is that God kind of guided evolution, not that evolution not the kind of version where it's like the Earth existed for 4,000 years and then God snapped his fingers. Like I'm not a biblical literalist. Is what I'm.
Like you know that, like you agree with like the history of the Earth and stuff, and like dating and fossils and stuff. You think that a God and stuff. I can understand that, yeah. And like even if you didn't believe that, the fact that you recognise that it's not a good idea to be teaching, you know, in a science class, oh, Earth is 4,000 years old. Like, it's not a good thing to be teaching. But you see like Republicans saying like, oh, you know, Sharia law is going to be in the US if you don't get rid of the Muslims and stuff.
The Sharia law.
Look at what Republicans are doing. You know, actively curtailing the right to get an abortion, bodily autonomy, actively, you know, pushing for creationism to be taught in schools, actively removing books from school curriculums that, you know, question the theocracy they wish to have. Like,
and
it's absurd.
And a lot of Republicans are openly kind of theocratic. Like, what's her name? Oh God. Oh, Ann Coulter. Oof. She said, let me find the quote. She said, let's see. I just want to find the quote before I put it up on screen, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Just so you know, they don't see me wasting my time. I mean, so we don't waste our viewers' time with me scrolling through. Let's see where we're here.
Oh gosh, I have to say I've not seen any message. I'm not the what's his name? Vohan hasn't joined yet. The other guy isn't there. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, but yeah, like what we were saying, just, you know, religion, like.
Here we go. This is from.
Here we go.
This is Owen.
Right, as we said that. Hello.
Oh, the drunk. Hello, drunk. Here we go. Here's the quote that I was finding from Ann Coulter. National Review Cannes columnist Ann Coulter. Even by her usually incendiary standards, Ann Coulter's response to the terrorist attack was something of a jaw dropper. We should invade their countries, kill their leaders, and convert them to Christianity. What is that but the mentality of a terrorist?
Exactly. And before I say any more, we should introduce our two new guests, Logan and the drunk.
Hello, drunk.
Hello.
Do you prefer us to call you something else other than the drunk?
You can call me Vohan.
Vohan, okay.
Hello, Vohan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Logan, are you there, or is he
just like listening in? I'm okay with that.
I mean, their video on their channel is like just, you know, the stream we're having now.
Okay. I'm fine with that. You know, honestly, it's increasing traffic to your channel, so there's no harm in it. So, Mr. Vohan, face. Hello, face.
There's no audio.
It's Logan, but the face was there. I think he could be a troll, but it doesn't matter.
I don't think he's a troll.
Still welcome.
He's not a troll.
Okay, good.
Anyway,
he's just having a bit of fun.
He's having audio difficulty, I think.
Yeah.
I see. So Mr. Vohan, why don't you describe kind of your political positions? Just introduce yourself to the audience.
So, well, I'm probably quite left-leaning. I believe... I mean, I'm sort of like a libertarian, but I also believe like that it's good to have like a safety net for people, you know, like a sort of social program, you know, if people come into hard times.
Okay.
So like, say if someone loses their job, something happens, you know, we should look after the most vulnerable people in society and stuff like that. But we shouldn't like be an overly like giving things too much away for free. Because I don't think that's good for people, and I think it's good for people to strive and achieve. But then again, it's, you know, sometimes bad things happens to people, and we should look after people, especially like people who can't earn money, or like mentally ill people, or ill people, disabled people. We should look after the most vulnerable people in society.
May I ask? I think it's like you said, it's good for people to strive to do stuff with their lives and stuff, and want to be able to, you know, produce and contribute to society. But firstly, do you think that you know, people shouldn't be, you know, threatened with the risk of, you know, poverty or a lesser life, regardless of what they do, and that you know, all human life has intrinsic value in itself? So
yeah, I'd go one step further and say all life has intrinsic value.
exactly,
Because you're a vegan, right?
Yes.
exactly. So then, do you think then that a system like capitalism, which is fundamentally based upon the selling of yourself, commodifying anything you have, and taking your capital and trying to get more capital, is sort of antithetical to the value of all life?
Well, I'd say that capitalism has probably created like the best places to live in the world.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. When it was first introduced, agriculture created the best places that there were in the world to live, and the system that supported that first society was slavery. After the fall of kind of the Roman Empire, in Europe at least, and in kind of other regions we see similar systems, there was a transition to feudalism, and then that system created the highest living standards that were known at the time. Then feudalism was gradually replaced by capitalism, and its living standards were, even better. Even Marxists do admit that capitalism is a better system than feudalism or slavery, but it's a different system, right? And so what we're saying is it's time for the next step on the chain.
Yeah.
But we've already, I mean, there has been examples of like communism and Marxism already existed in the world, and they've kind of always made things work. I mean, just look at North Korea to South Korea. You've got South Korea seems like a lovely place with people, having a great time, where North Korea is like a horrid dictatorial regime.
Yeah.
I know that's probably one of the worst examples of communism, and there can be much better. But I don't know. Has it worked in practice yet? I'm not sure it has.
I mean, I think with the North Korea situation, like no doubt people are like I'm not going to sit here and say I want to go and live in North Korea, but
Neither do
we
I.
have to yeah, exactly. Like, well, I think we have to analyze the country itself and determine whether communist is an accurate label. Like communism,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, Logan.
Oh, okay, thank you. There we go. Perfect.
Let's just take a bit of a moment to like Logan himself. So, Logan, where would you say you stand politically?
I don't even vote.
Oh, okay. So you're apolitical. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's kind of just a waste of time.
Okay, I've seen that attitude before. What would you say you think of? Oh,
How's it going?
nice sweater.
And
a basement. Okay. Okay.
Anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
What I was saying to you, Vohan, communism is the worker ownership and means of production, the abolition of the hierarchy, and structuring society are based around a ruling class dictating stuff through their wealth and through the free market and stuff. And North Korea, though it calls itself communist, is it has a dictatorship and it's a totalitarian state. There's clearly a political class ruling over everyone else, and thus to call it communist is very misleading and outright not true. It's like North Korea also calls itself a democracy as well, and anyone with half a recognition of a political system can tell you that no, it's not a democracy at all. You've got to take the naming of these countries at as with very little salt, because these countries are obviously going to be honest about the state they're in. But you said North Korea and South Korea are different countries. And yeah, it's true. There's better.
Oh, another one. Hello, Jehovah's Dragon.
Owen, bitch ass McDonald. Jesus wants to know if you're a fan of his baby killing ass. Hey, Logan Blake, what's up?
I don't like you.
I don't like you either, man. Can we kiss?
This guy is a troll. I've seen this guy before.
Did someone put the link somewhere else?
I don't know, but that guy, I've seen that guy pop up on like 50 different streams, like out of nowhere. He's ridiculous.
Or he's just a really active fundamentalist.
Vohan, I sent you the link. Did you post it anywhere else?
No.
Well, it must have been you, because I mean,
What about Logan? Maybe he sent it somewhere else.
How would Logan have got it?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, who did Logan was added by Vohan then?
So it was one of you two.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
No, I sent it to Logan, but no one else.
So Logan sent it to like.
Just kick him if he comes back in.
Yeah.
I didn't post it. I don't know what happened.
It must have been one. Yeah, it must have been one of you two. I mean, like, we're not gullible.
It doesn't matter. Let's let bygones be bygones, as they say.
Indeed.
So Vohan, what do you think of our response?
What was your response? That it's not proper communism. Like, well, I admitted it is like North Korea is like one of the worst examples of communism, and it could be done better. Like, don't get me wrong. If you can do it perfectly, I can't see a better system. But the problem is, it just doesn't work with people. People are greedy, corrupt. If people can be like all decent people and like share things, then yeah, I can't see a problem with it. I mean, I don't know. There's a few issues. I mean, if you can, yeah, no, I don't. I kind of feel like capitalism is best, but you need like a social capitalism.
Okay. So you're more of a social democratic libertarian.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of stuff you said there, which I can resonate with and understand. But firstly, North Korea, it's not that it's a case of bad communism. It's not a case of communism at all, like in the sense that it doesn't meet any of the basic tenets of communism.
Communism is stateless, classless society.
Yeah, exactly.
North Korea has a state, has a class. It would be like characterizing, say, the Soviet Union as a republic just because it calls itself a republic, even though it's clearly more of an oligarchy.
Yeah, or North Korea as a democracy because it calls itself a democracy. But coming on to what you were saying about, how humans, if they were ideal, would be sharing, but they don't. I think we have to look at the way humanity is under the current system, where very much it's based around individualism and protecting your own capital, making more with what you have, and consequently, whilst people would want to be nice people, they're forced by the system to protect their own interests over everyone else. They if they don't sell their labor and don't put their income towards the necessities of life, they're going to starve. If they're not making money for the capitalists, they don't have the ability to buy food, pay rent, pay for the necessities that keep them alive. So naturally, people become defensive and protective of their wealth. And I mean, we can just look at the way humans are with family to show that humans do have that compassion in them. Look at the way people are with friends. Like, they're not needed technically to be a good capitalist. If you wanted to be the best capitalist you could just go on by yourself, making as much as you could, and rule the world essentially with the wealth you've accrued. But humans for the most part aren't like that. It's the system that creates these the enabling of humanity's selfishness, and a better system where people's labor can't be profited off, where every single person has access to the basic tools of life, where
why would anyone do anything though if everything's just given to them?
But
it's not just going to be given to them. The tenet of communism is to each according to their from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. So it means that everyone's needs are met, but people with ability are free to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Do you want to know one of the main reasons why I'm against communism?
Go ahead.
That's the tenet of communism. That's its major tenet. That's the system it wants to create.
But additionally, you also got to consider the automation and the growing trend of machines doing the job of human labor.
Yeah, no. If as soon as we get like robots to do all the work, I mean, it's probably the only system that's going to win. But that's a future scenario. But the main reason why I'm against communism now is because say if where do you live? America. Say if America went, right, we're all communists now, and you all went into
I'm not America. I don't live in America.
Okay, well, whatever country, it doesn't matter. Wales. Wales all go communists. Now, how will people stop if say whatever country goes communist, now the only way I see, like I'm a vegan, I think it's wrong to kill an animal when you don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's wrong to do that to do it to meat. Now, if in a communist country that goes straight from the system that we have now, the beliefs that we have now, and how we treat animals goes straight into communism, why would it stop? The only way it's going to stop is through the capitalism system of supply and demand. People voting with their dollars, say, "I'm not going to pay for that."
But then, is that necessarily true of capitalism? So, for instance, we, like you rightfully said, it's wrong to kill lives unnecessarily when there's clear alternatives. It's wrong to destroy the environment for our own profits. Yet, here we are in 2018, and the world's on the brink of an ecological disaster, where our farming industry is not only mass killing animals, but also destroying the world around us through the use of harmful chemicals and fossil fuel consumption and all those stuff. And the reality is people can't avoid these corporations and these practices because the capitalists doing so control the means of production. They have private control of all these elements of society, and thus, if you don't want to use them, you're actively avoiding food and land and rent. It's like every single element of our lives is controlled by this system
and used to profit.
Exactly, and not only that, you can look at the elections themselves and how wealth has corrupted and distorted politics. I mean, in my country especially, and in the US, voting records are not voting records, voting like abilities are terrible. I mean, I'm placing your accent as Scouse. What was it again? Vohan. Vohan. There you go. Sorry. And
yeah,
excellent. I'm not too bad with my accents. And you're in a slightly better situation than myself, because my family live in the southwest, and it's one of the most gerrymandered areas of the country, in that it's pretty much dominated by a single party, the Conservatives. So not only do you have limited voting power in itself, because the people you're going to vote for are probably not going to get in unless you vote for a certain party, and that party has power and support in that region. But democracy is a slow turning thing under capitalism, especially when it's stuck and confined to a free market where the wealth of corporations is always going to influence and dictate what happens in the government. It's like earlier you were saying how you support a social safety net, and how you support the idea that people who are out of a job and out of any sort of means of providing for themselves receive help from the state. But as we're seeing in the UK, that help is being cut. Social programs that go towards the things in society like parks and libraries and stuff, and the benefits that directly go to helping the mentally ill and the disabled and all that stuff survive, is being cut, which is why people across the country can't heat their homes, can't access the NHS, can't do anything really, because of the way capitalism is. There's no reason for that to be like that, because if we wanted to, everyone could have free good meals a day and a house and energy, and we'd have more left over, like, in general. But because of the amount of wealth hoarded at the top, because of the theft of profit and produce from workers, you see the way society is today. I'm sorry for saying loads and loads and waffling on and stuff, but
no, it's okay. It's very good, very good. I'd just like to add, you spoke earlier of the communist country, and that we would jump immediately into communism. That's not actually the model that most socialists that I know, or most Marxists or whatever, advocate. What they really advocate is for a socialist transition period, where a state that is ruled through democracy, an actual democracy, economic and political, of the workers. It kind of controls the system. And that way, your campaign against animal cruelty could be, much more easily supported, because it would be supported by the people and you'd be able to win them over, rather than having to compete against these business lobbies and these businesses that have billions and billions of dollars, who have an interest in supporting the status quo and who would be lobbying hard against your veganistic beliefs. So that's why I think that a socialist system actually would be better for veganism. Logan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm all for voting with your dollar, right? Over voting, because I find, voting, you kind of, you're voting for somebody crappy either time, but you can make a wiser decision with your dollar. So that's why I see it's just a waste of time.
Yeah. So under socialism, democracy would infiltrate all aspects of life. So not only would we have, we would replace the kind of current corrupt two-party system with a more active, direct democracy.
Also, sorry, you go ahead.
No, you go.
All right. And I mean, you're completely right. In many cases, voting is going to have no effect on how the country is run. You can see the amount of people who don't vote in society is quite high because of the sheer lack of democracy in many cases. Like probably no one likes the idea that are thought about by some of the politicians we have. Like in my country, fox hunting, for instance, like is ridiculous. Like seeing numerous members of the current Conservative government saying, "Yeah, fox hunting is a thing we want to legalize again." But because of the way democracy is, or distorted rather under capitalism, these people are able to get into power and then do pass these ridiculous laws that no one wants. And under our system of capitalism, we're always going to see wealthy entities control democracy because through campaign funding, because if you have more money, you can spend more on distribution and advertising and all that stuff. So, which is why the wealthy, the wealthier party is normally going to win the election. You've also got to consider the fact that politics is determined a lot by the free market as well. So for all we talk about voting with our
I think it all depends like where you come from, right? Because like I live in Canada and it's pretty much been the same ever since I was born. Like it's not like some crazy ups and downs every time somebody gets elected. It's like, people are more concerned about shoveling their driveways, right? It's like it's not it's just like I haven't noticed a change in anything since I was born, right?
That's
so
because
maybe it's different. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, I was just saying. So maybe it's like if you're where you're from, like say you're in a country with like some dictator or something, and he's just horrible, and then he gets like, some other dictator starts. Like maybe it's going to be vastly different in your country, right? But I'm just saying, like for me, I just don't even see, what's the point? It's just going to be the same. There's nothing that I'm concerned about changing.
So you actually brought a very interesting point because you illustrated how democracy isn't really very democratic under capitalism because the two or three parties, I guess we should say, if we include the NDP who never win, in Canada are both pro-capitalism. Neither of them are really interested in altering the status quo. So a vote doesn't change anything. However, say like we go to Owen's country, England, the last election offered a starkly different vision of the country. One offered socialism and a different economic system, real justice, and another under Theresa May offered more of the same.
I mean, it wasn't quite, it was more like a much more left-wing version of social democracy than socialism.
Yeah, best we can get, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like has just been said, like quite brilliantly, because it's in the best interest of capitalists to maintain the system. The majority of Western countries is seeing their two main parties be, like one's neoliberalism and one's neoliberalism light, like, which is why you quite rightfully say like lots of people just don't care about it anymore because it's no matter who they vote for, the outcome for their life is going to be the same. And that's what we as socialists and as Marxists want to change. We want to say, no, it doesn't have to be like this. We can see people have lives that aren't determined by a free market, aren't left up to whether a capitalist can make profits off them. And that way, I take it, the apathy that you have for the political system, that's you're a person that's as enamored by politics, and that's fine. But it's important to still recognize that societally there are still real issues. Are you a vegan?
Vohan?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm really
Yeah.
bad at names tonight, apparently.
Yeah, so I mean, I see issues like not only just veganism, but like also fair trade, cruelty free. Like you want to do stuff that contributes to helping with the environment, like walking to work, composting, everything, basically working your way every day, doing better stuff. Like it's not just like you can just become perfect, right? But it's like if you're making baby steps every day to like better yourself. And basically, if you're looking at, companies in general, like you look at McDonald's and they're like, that's just a completely unethical company, right? If everybody went and bought salads, right, from McDonald's, they wouldn't make the burgers. You know what I mean? So it's like you could change an entire company into an ethical company just by using your dollar, because they don't actually care. They just want to make money. That's what they're all about.
I mean, I think
can I just say
Of
something?
course, Vohan.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So if you look at like the improvements like humans have made, like it's only the West and capitalism that have like decided, all right, yeah, we're going to abolish slavery, we're gonna give everyone equal rights, and stuff like that. So, and they're the capitalist countries that have done this. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I mean, maybe more freedom gives people more the ability to do things like that sort of thing.
Okay, so to respond to both your points, firstly, Logan, you're absolutely right in saying that in an ideal society, people could just say, no, let's not buy these unethical farm factories, burgers made with cows that have been kept in like a 2x2 meter pen their whole life. Like, in an ideal society that would work, but in reality, it's not as simple as that. Even if you buy a salad from McDonald's, it's still going to come from a deeply unethical farming system. But beyond that, it's easy to visualize spending $1 when it's McDonald's. You don't have to have a Big Mac and fries to live. But however, the foods we eat on a daily basis, milk, for instance, is a prime one, and dairy products, just the entire plethora of awful situations going on in that industry, which I'm sure Vohan can tell you about, being a vegan. Like the fact that's all going on, and the fact dairy is a massive staple of lots of people's diets, and it would be quite hard to just get people to change away from that, is a major thing. The destruction of land is another major thing. Like, how do you think we get a lot of our energy from? And if you stop using electricity and the energy that's powering our society, we're going to have a much harder time living. It's not easy to use your dollars to change the way we live, when a lot of things we'd be changing are at present integral to our lived experience. And it's in the best interest of capitalists to maintain the status quo, because it's how they maintain their power, which is why we want reform, because then we can move towards a society, like you say, where we're not exploiting the land and we're not desecrating animal rights to make a profit. And to answer your point, Vohan, about how Western capitalist countries have got the best human rights and stuff, and have made the most progress in terms of human liberty. I think it's important to firstly point out the social conditions that have caused this, and it's not come from a capitalist mindset in itself. I mean, if we look at slavery, many of the arguments for slavery, for instance, in America, came from capitalists who highlighted the profit margins that capitalists could make if they commodified human lives. If they said, no, let's keep using the black race as a form of profit making to maintain the power we have. And it's also why America still has massive racial inequality problems, such as the fact that its prison system is literally written as an alternative to slavery. They just call it penal labor, and commodify their laborers still. It came from anti-capitalists and leftists to make conditions better, to fight for workers' rights and civil rights movements and all the liberties we have today. And certainly, it's not come from people who have commodified and tried to commodify every single element of life. But we also have to look at the history of colonialism as well. The West has been in a position to lead the world in all elements because of the ravaging abroad it did prior, like in India, where the British Empire plundered Indian resources for generations, like in Latin America, where America has invaded and ruined several nations to the point where they've become dependent on the capitalist system through force, because the capitalism has smashed their nation so many times that the infrastructure has had to just essentially accept it or face another smashing from America. So I think it's important to analyze everything. And I'm really sorry, but it's like 2 a.m. in the UK and I'm actually getting quite tired. So do you think perhaps we could schedule like a proper stream for all of us to talk about this stuff?
Yeah, I'm very interested in a larger conversation. And we obviously don't want to tire out Owen too much.
I don't know how tired you are, Vohan, because obviously it's nearly 2 where you are as well.
No, I've been sleeping all day.
Oh, okay. Lucky you. And it would be lovely if you could we'll continue the hangout once I'm gone, but I'm not sure if I can do that whilst I'm the host of the channel.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it works. I
don't think I can.
And if only I had my own YouTube channel active.
What me and Vohan were doing, we're just going around stream to stream, like seeing if there's any people to talk to and whatever, and you guys are nice people. If we come across goofballs, then we really troll them or whatever. But it's like you guys are nice people.
Come across any goofballs?
Today, yes, lots. We already made a big stream about it, so it was fun.
Well, thank you both for coming on, and if you want to do streams with us again, we're more than welcome to, because it's refreshing. After the stream I had yesterday, where I got called a cunt 50 times or something.
My God, that's terrible one.
It was really surreal. Like, this Australian guy came on and was saying, you I can't do an Australian accent, so we'll try. But basically screaming at me about how I was some privileged student and stuff. So it's refreshing having people of an opposing opinion who can say it nicely and calmly and listen and stuff.
And thank you for listening to us. You've been very wonderful to talk to. Right. When is the earliest time that you're free, Owen, do you think? Are you free tomorrow at the same time?
Not sure if I'm free tomorrow. I mean, we will have Twitter, so I'll DM all of us, put us on the group chat or something, and we can flesh it out another time. But thank you, Lapis, and later on, obviously, Vohan and Logan, for coming on. It's been a lovely stream, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks very much, everyone.
No, thanks. Me and Logan are going to... I am anyway, but we're going to try and find some more people to go on. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Ta-ta.
Bye.